Riedel Glassware. You taste it. Did you taste it, Sorrel?
Hello, everyone. Rebecca Nelson, Wine Club Director at Becker Vineyards, here again to welcome you to yet another virtual tasting. We're really excited tonight. We've got a lot of great guests on for you again. Tonight, we're tasting our 2017 Counoise, and that is all single vineyard designated from the farmhouse vineyards. So hopefully you've got that one going. As an added part of tonight's and the tastings for this week, we're going to be adding a glassware component. So those of you who bought the set of 3 glasses, we're going to be using 2 of those tonight. So I need you to pour a little bit of wine into the New World Pinot Noir glass from your set, and then a little bit of wine into your Old World Syrah glass as well. So tonight you will be double fisting. You can practice your double swirling. It will be really a great time in your own house. So if you spill it, it's not for me to clean up. So we're going to be using both of those glasses tonight. I'm going to turn this over to John Leahy, our winemaker, of course, who's going to get us going, and Dr. Richard Becker again tonight, and also our assistant winemaker and enologist Rachel Fanning are with us this evening as well. So I'll kick it over to John to get everybody started. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm pretty excited for this. So the folks who had us send you the glasses, I think you're in for a real treat all this week. And for those of you who didn't get the glassware, grab a secondary wine glass, something a little different. You want a couple glasses to compare with, and Rebecca's going to lead us through that in just a few seconds. So, Doc, how's it going?
It's good, John. And this must be our 16th virtual tasting. And just to remember the great pandemic that's affecting our country, our state, the world. It'll be 7 o'clock and in about 30 minutes in New York, and all the New Yorkers will come out on their fire escapes, and hopefully they'll have a glass of wine, and they'll sing and shout and cheer each other up. And that's what this is about. It's certainly we remember and think about the people who risked their lives to allow us to be here. But this is a break in that moment. And
oh, fantastic! I will drink to that. So, Rachel, are you going to check in from the cellar?
I'm back in our cellar again today. All of our lovely reserve library wines behind us.
And we're not really sure whether you're actually drinking the Counoise or you're just randomly opening bottles.
Don't even worry about it. We're fine.
So we were having a little discussion right before we went live about whether or not we were the first person in Texas to produce a Counoise. And though we know several of our neighbors have also purchased grapes from the same grape vineyard farmhouse, I'm going to step out on a limb and say I think we are the first one to bottle a single vineyard designated Counoise as a still wine, not a rosé. I know we've had a couple of friends that have done rosés of Counoise, but so I would like to say cheers to everybody. I hope you discover this new Rhone varietal. And I want to throw it back to Doc Rebecca right before we get into the tasting portion. Doc, could you tell us a little bit about Counoise itself?
well, Counoise is it's not a hybrid. It's not something that occurred as a cross between 2 other grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon, for example. There's some evidence that it was presented into the 13th century papal court by a Spaniard, probably a grape brought from Spain. I think the name is tied to his name. The origin of the name Counoise is a little vague. This is certainly the first Texas Counoise in a bottle, and it's had a wonderful tour, especially as a blender, and the wines are Chateauneuf du Pape. The Perrin family has done brilliantly with it, both in France and in California. And I think it's great. We kind of discovered it. You could tell this, John, better than I, but one of our jobs is to taste through the barrels and see how things are going. And we came upon these 3 generally blending grapes from Rhone, Cinsault, Carignan, and Counoise, and we were amazed how they tasted. That really led to this being bottled as an individual hybrid, an individual varietal.
We did the 3 C's. It's what we nicknamed at the winery, but they also in the different nautical artwork from Tony Bell. I don't know if you can see behind me, but the Counoise bottle is sitting here behind me tonight. I thought that I would just keep it prominent. Excuse me, I can't talk. There, thank you. Close up from Doc.
Bingo.
Yeah, these, so the Counoise that we're tasting, I want Rebecca and Rachel, I haven't forgotten about you. We're going to get back to the discussion of our first vintage, which is This Is It. So we've got a few good stories about the grapes and how they looked and all the wonderfulness around there. But Rebecca, why don't you take us through the first part of this tasting?
Sure. Thank you, John. So your Pinot Noir glass is a New World Pinot Noir glass. And part of the thing about Riedel Glassware and glassware in general is that for wine glasses, Riedel is the first company to make varietal designated wine glasses. And so in Texas, we're not necessarily New World or Old World when it comes to the flavor profile that they're looking for. Texas wines, of course, we have our own flavor profile, our own terroir, and everything that affects the grapes. So one of the fun things that we do is we get to try these wines in all these different glasses to then find the one that we feel like brings out the best flavors, the best aromas that we really enjoy. So I prefer this wine personally in the Pinot Noir glass. I would like everybody to swirl that Pinot Noir glass, smell, and then go ahead and take a sip.
Can we stop there and just keep sipping?
One other tip. I want you to take another glass. So if you have both of these glasses, great, use these glasses. Like John said, if you don't, grab 2 different glasses out of your cupboard. If John's got a tiki cup, I mean, really, just grab a different glass. The point is that it makes a difference where the wine hits your tongue, how your mouth is open, all of those things, all of those are physics, and it makes a difference in how the wine tastes. So grab your second glass. If you have the Riedel Glassware, that's the Syrah glass. Go ahead and smell that one. And now take a taste out of that glass.
Mine tastes like a Mai Tai.
Yeah. And hopefully you can smell and kind of taste some difference. Go back and forth between the glass. And it's really about what makes the wine taste best to you. There are certain things with each varietal that we tend to look for as far as different aromas and different things on the palate. And so we're looking for the one that we feel like expresses those the best. So for me, and I believe for John, we both really like this one in the Pinot Noir glass. It's a light bodied red wine, the same kind of vein as a Pinot Noir. So that's kind of where we put it. But it's important to kind of note that if you pour a glass of wine into different glasses, it's going to change the way it tastes, and it's going to change the way it smells, and it might change whether you enjoy it or not. So John, Dr. Becker, Rachel, what are you guys tasting and smelling out of these glasses?
Well, I'll say that just when we were tasting out of the barrels, we were overcome by the strawberry note in the aromatic on this wine. And, that's a little more muted than out of the barrel. But this wine spent 2 years in barrel. I think mainly French oak. Rachel, is that right?
Yes, sir. I think the predominant was French.
And now it's an incredibly young, sort of vibrant wine. Despite 2 years in a barrel. The color in this wine is always lighter, as are the wines of Chateau Neuf du Pape, which I really like. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful job by you and John.
I think the glass does make a big difference. And I want to hit on that again because I've been smelling it between the two, not just my tiki glass, but in the Syrah glass, I really lose a lot of the fruit leaves in the Syrah glass.
I noticed that as well.
Yeah, it really does. But I get right back to the Pinot glass, and I can smell that fruit and that kind of cellar-esque, that really deep note comes right back. Yeah, that's and Doc, to your point, yeah, we are spoiled. We get to taste these, and we get to cherry pick the barrels that we taste out of. But
I try.
Yeah, I know, and we try to hide them. So
I'm hiding them. I taste 4 of them.
Well, it's kind of
guided cherry picking.
Where's the wine today? It's kind of like a giant Where's Waldo? So Rebecca, when you guys do the Riedel tasting, I know there's 4 glasses there and stuff, but what do you think? Why did you choose the Syrah and the Pinot and not the Bordeaux and the Pinot glass?
So with the Counoise, because it is a lighter bodied red wine, we tried it out of all 3, of course. The Pinot glass is the one that I think shows everything the best and brings a lot out. And like you said, it brings those fruit notes out. And I really feel like the Pinot Noir glass brings more of the subtle aromas that you get, and you lose a lot of that in the Syrah glass. And so I really wanted to show the difference, is why I chose those two. In the Bordeaux glass, it is also open and wide, and so you do get a little bit more of the fruit in the Bordeaux glass, so it's not as big of a difference. And so the reason I chose these two was to show kind of the stark contrast.
Doc, so your glass, and I'm gonna get back to Rachel on some stories here, but can you hold that glass up again for us to see, Doc? Yeah, see, I love that glass. What are you getting out of that glass, Dr. Becker?
Well, nice combination of aromatic. I think some blueberries, some cassis, some marzipan, some strawberry,
Okay.
and that follows very nicely on the palate.
Yeah,
all the way through.
Yeah, you just said marzipan and cherries, and now I really want dessert. Rachel, Harvest 2017. It was a very easy year, hardly anything going on.
I can hardly remember it. It's not true, friends. It wasn't. It was a huge year, the biggest year up until last year. And it was, I say, there were a solid 3 weeks where it was pretty manic. I cannot remember the tonnage off the top of my head. Can you, what we did in those 3 weeks in September?
We got, I think, maybe 4 or 5 tons. I don't think we only made about 800 gallons of this total. So it really was not that many tons. Yeah.
No, there's only, I want to say there's 3 at the time. Maybe we were getting 3 acres. I think maybe there's 5 acres planted of it, and now we're getting all 5 of those acres. But at the time, maybe 2 or 3, and that was it. And it was a relatively young grape, a young vine.
Yeah, this was the first year we know that we took the fruit, the third leaf. So, you know, on second leaf, it did produce a little bit of fruit the second year of the vine, but the third leaf, and it didn't produce near what it's producing now. And the quality of this wine is incredible for such a young vine. But I remember, do you remember walking through the vineyard with Nick and Anthony? And because it was a new grape and their new plantings and stuff, and these guys are so on top of everything and so conscientious and so worried about doing the best job they can that Nick, I swear to God, has named each individual berry, and he measures them to make sure they're all the same. But he was so worried because Counoise is a huge grape. It's not a small, tiny berry. It looks like a table grape.
Yeah, it's a huge, fat, juicy grape. So when it comes into the winery on our crush pad, we're having to change out our crush and our whole crush system, the machinery itself, to accommodate these big, fat, juicy berries and make sure that we capture all that we can, not kick off too much. Yeah. Keep what we want and leave the rest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I just got a comment rolling from this really familiar sound, Joe Becker. Do you know a Joe Becker? Because I'm not real sure. But so, well, he was mentioning black cherry on there, the black cherry.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, those grapes, when they came in, and they are used sometimes, if they're not all used in winemaking, they do sell them as market grapes too, but they're a very tough skin berry. And Rachel, do you remember when they came in and how we were worried slightly because they didn't look super dark? But
right. Yeah. Well, and I think that you can attest to that in the glass, that it's got grapefruit, it's got nice bright red fruits and some other, darker fruits, but there's not a lot of tannic structure. It's a very light tannic wine. Right. And despite the fact that the grape is a very dark grape, it doesn't provide a lot of tannins to that. I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for conjuncting my words together. Big fat berry, even though it's dark skinned, you would expect it to have more tannins in it. And this one doesn't actually have a lot of tannins. It comes across as a much more brighter, lighter.
I want to kick it one more time back to Rebecca before she takes off. So Rebecca, are you still there? Did I lose you? Nope, I think I may have lost her. So I wanted to remind, and Doc, we're gonna, I want to learn a little bit more about the Counoise and why you were so excited when we asked you about this odd varietal. But I want to remind everybody to join us again on Wednesday. Rebecca will be back, so no fear. She's coming back all this week to take us through this glassware and tasting. So Doc, the Rhone program at Becker Vineyards. Why?
Why? Well, because that's what the growers have planted. primarily, and they've made some great choices. If you'd asked me, should we plant Counoise, Carignan, and Cinsault, I would say not very much. You know, it's 5% at the most as a blending grape and Châteauneuf du Pape. But once we taste it at the barrel, you know, it's the expression of this grape in this part of the world, and it's different from other places, and it's wonderfully ripe and delicious. I mean, this is the great picnic wine, and
Oh, yeah.
I think
I think, you know, what I'm excited about, and Rachel's alluded to talking about, you know, like Pinot Noir, we don't really have Pinot Noir here in Texas. There's a little bit grown here, but it's not as expressive as it could be. We don't know if that's because of the vineyard it's grown in, or the way it's made, or is just the grape not suited for Texas. But this grape seems to both be suited for Texas and suited for that niche in the market, where if you want a Pinot, grab a bottle of this. It will do a nice substitute, but it's even more expressive to me than Pinot as far as the fruit and the layers. This particular vintage, especially. Rachel, what do you think about dealing with Counoise and making it into wine?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to touch base on what you just said about the Pinot Noir versus the Counoise. I think one of the reasons it's so well suited to Texas, and specifically the High Plains, is because of where it originates in the Rhone Valley, and it's used to those it's hotter than a Mediterranean climate. It's, you know, it's more the southern Rhone Valley area, so it's a hotter climate, and they do get the mistral winds that are a little reminiscent of West Texas in Lubbock. If you've ever been out there during a windy day, which are most days.
Does it get windy out there? I've never noticed.
One time, I remember my hair blowing. But I think that's why it's so well suited, and it holds up so much better to the Texas heat and arid climate.
Right. Well, I would like to go back and touch on that, the wind in West Texas, to let everybody know. If you folks haven't been out there, it's so windy it blew all the trees away about 1,000 years ago. So. Well,
you know, this one reminds me a little bit of some of the old Latache Pinot Noirs that I've tasted from Burgundy, and that's quite a reach. But open a bottle of Latache and get it side by side with the Counoise. See what you think.
Oh, that would be fun. Can we do that instead of work tomorrow?
As soon as possible.
So, briefly to touch again, you know, there is a little bit of Ready Vineyards in here too. So this is a 95% Counoise and 5% Cabernet. So we actually used a little tiny amount of Cabernet in here to balance that tannin ratio. We tried it 100% and 5%. We were equally split down the line when we tried this. So you cannot really taste the Cabernet. I think it might be 4 or 5%. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But the tannin here, and you know, somebody mentioned earlier skin to juice ratio on the rolling comments here on Facebook. Yes, the grape is so much larger that it does have a lot more juice, you know, to skin ratio. Instead of the other way around, you'll constantly hear me harp on skin to juice ratio, more skin, less juice to make darker red wines. Not every red wine has to be a dark bomb of tannin and color. This lighter varietal carrying the fruit, it's all about balance at the end of the day. Your thoughts on balance on this, Doc, and then I want your thoughts as well, Rachel.
I think the balance is excellent, and I love the combination of the delicate flavor, delicate color, delicate aromatic. This is a beautiful wine, and I'm really proud that we discovered it and bottled it separately. And I think we have plans to do that some more, John. Right?
Yes, we do. We do indeed. We've got a pretty good follow up on this. Absolutely. Rachel, what do you think on the balance?
I absolutely agree. This to me it's been a fun project and a really fun wine to produce. And one reason, because it is so different from a lot of the other wines that we produce, where we are more of a Bordeaux house, and this one is lighter. It's yep, I do like it. I like it a lot. I'm enjoying it quite immensely.
So barrels, we did use a lot of French oak, but we did not use a lot of new French oak on this. I think initially And here's maybe I'm telling secrets on how to make the sausage and nobody wants to know, but I know initially the first month we put it in an awful lot of new oak just to have a place to put it so we could open a tank. We went back and balanced it and took out a lot of that new oak and put this on more neutral oak. But with the French barrels, we have such a tighter grain on there that it doesn't pick up a lot of the toasted notes. So what were your thoughts 6 months into it? So for those of you at home that don't know this, Rachel, every once in a while will literally come in and kick my door open in the office, have a glass in her hand and go, have you tasted this? Do you know what's going on here? And it's like, is something wrong? And she's like, no, it tastes great. And I'm like, you know, it's 6:45 a.m. and we haven't had our Cheerios yet. What your initial impression, Rachel, to right before we bottled, how did that change?
Oh goodness, you know, that's making me rack my memory here. It was a fun grape to push through harvest, all through fermentation, simply because of the bright fruits and the great aromas. And literally, as this is fermenting, it smells like Fruit Loops. It is so bright and fruity. And so it was a lot of fun to watch it age, taste it along its aging time, and watch it settle down and to become something a little bit more serious than a Fruit Loop wine.
Right.
And I would like for you to remember that we also have those puncheons that are double the size of our normal barrels. That if you guys remember, we had this wine in one of those puncheons and we were going to keep it just by itself because that wine to oak ratio, that lesser oak ratio was so nice.
Yeah.
I think it did really, really well with that less aging, the oak aging components to it.
Doc, what did you think when you first tasted this right after we finished fermenting it to the time you just decided we should bottle this by itself? Were you a fan all the way along, or was there at any point where you were like a little up in the air?
And I thought it was wonderful when I first smelled it and tasted it, and it is really never varied. It's interesting that this wine can be so fresh and so delicate after 2 years in a barrel. You know, it's not oxidized. It's, you know, nothing has gone away. It's just in beautiful balance. I'd love to know what my longtime friend Trish Williams, she's a pioneer in the Texas wine industry. She probably has tasted maybe some small plantings of Counoise somewhere in the past. Love to know what she thinks about this. I think we sent out several hundred bottles of this for this tasting tonight, and I'd love to see I wish everybody was immediately available so that we could see what they're thinking as they taste it. It would be an interesting.
Well, if they'll start writing comments on Facebook, I've got some scroll here, and we're not quite done. We're reaching towards the end, but I'm looking for some good questions here. And we might as well pop into the food question because that's one of the questions I did get. So the food pairings for this, Doc, what would you pair? One at a restaurant and two just from your house. So I want two different ideas.
For me, this is, you know, if you pull this out of a picnic basket and you had all the things you take to a picnic, you had foie gras, you had cheese, you had wonderful fresh baguette, you had butter and bread and butter. I think delicate things like that would be what I would like with it.
That does sound good. Okay, Rachel, both at home and at a restaurant, what do you want?
I would be happy to pair this with a nice little spinach salad with a little chopped up pecans and strawberries and nice little vinaigrette on it. That would make me a happy girl with some cheese, of course. Gotta have cheese.
The cheese. I both. And I'm pretty sure Doc has a high cholesterol problem right now.
There are some problems about food and wine pairing, and one of the first times we were in a French restaurant, we were in the town of Dome, in the Dordogne River Valley, and they brought out, you know, it was a standard 5-hour meal, and finally they brought out the cheese, and they brought out a big selection of cheeses on a tray and set them on our table. And I'm tasting all of them, and I tasted one, and we thought it was the best we'd ever tasted. And we asked the waiter, what is this wonderful cheese? And he said, Monsieur, it is butter. So, butter is also.
That's so funny because years ago, Jody and I brought our young niece Sarah to Ireland on a family trip, and she started eating the Irish butter there because she thought it was, she thought it was dessert. It's 88% butter. So, well, I did get a question. What about pork tenderloin with this? And before I give you my food pairings, to answer the folks at home, yes, pork tenderloin is a natural for this. Absolutely. So I think, to be honest, I'd pair this with fried chicken at home and maybe some deviled eggs. Speaking of which, a shout out to my friend Sarah and her husband Billy. You still owe me the egg and the chicken. We got to resolve that question. She promised to mail an egg and a chicken to me and see which one came first. So also at a restaurant, I would, quite frankly, I would go game. I would go quail. I would go, especially Texas quail. And I am really, really right now missing the Perini's chicken fried quail.
I think anything at Perini Ranch Steakhouse would be good with this.
Oh, you're not kidding, right? Absolutely. Okay, so folks, just a general reminder, please send your questions. We'd love to get questions on here. Joe Becker, you asked about Thanksgiving. Buddy, you guys can come over for Thanksgiving. We'll serve this.
I tried so hard to not let Thanksgiving be my food pairing answer again. But yeah, I think it would work great.
I was waiting for it. This is like a natural Thanksgiving.
For other answers.
Yeah, I just wanted it one more time. Yeah. So on Wednesday, we're going to be doing the Malbec. So folks, if you're going to join us for Wednesday, we're doing the Malbec for the tasting. And then Friday, we're going to be doing the Cab Franc. And I'm going to give you a few days advance notice. I'm making the Leahy Castle famous sauteed mushrooms over a filet mignon for Friday's food pairing. It's a simple steak and mushrooms, which is going to be bomb with that Cab Franc. So yeah, if you haven't joined us for Food Fridays, please do so. Wednesday again will be the Malbec. Next week, our Mother Day pack up is ready to go. It's Mom's Day, and your mom deserves it, and you deserve one too for having been raised by your mom. So that's what I always tell my mom. So anyway, for next week's pack up, we've got the Jolie, the Fleur Sauvage, and the Culinaria, which are wonderful treats for Mother's Day. So treat yourself, treat your mom, but join us next week again. Of course, we still have 2 more tasting days this week. Get your questions in here. We'll try to answer them. We've gotten a lot of really good shout outs. Doc, Rachel, I'd like to say cheers. I'd like to wish everybody out there in our audience and everywhere, wonderful health and great wine. Thank you for joining us again.
Okay. Cheers.